of time. We have a jam-packed hour for you guys, and we're just really excited. So we're SSA Insurance Services. Most of you guys are clients of ours or are connected to us and know who we are. But for those of you who don't, we are a health insurance agency in San Diego. We love what we do. We really provide value for clients when it comes to really designing and implementing creative benefits packages to help attract the right talent. And we love partnering with other consultants and people like Michael who can bring value to our clients. And again, today, we're really all about driving results and really digging in on how to create an effective company culture. So that's what Michael's going to be speaking on today. Just a little bit about a background for Michael and his company. I met Michael 5 years ago, and many of you who are on this call, I probably introduced Michael at some point. Many of you guys might have attended a webinar, or actually it was an in-person meeting, a breakfast 4 years ago where we had Michael speak very similarly on effective company culture. We had him interview one of our clients who did a great job at really building their company culture from the ground up. And it was a successful event. We wanted to bring Michael back. He's just so knowledgeable. He knows so much in this area. He's driven great results for his clients. We are actually right now using him as well from a culture and operational standpoint to implement some scorecard and just some, people operations. Michael, you can go into what you're doing for us. We're in the middle of it right now, and I just know that what we're going to walk away with is going to set us apart and really get us to where we want to be as an organization. So 4 years ago, we had Michael speak, and just over the course of the last 4 years, he's been able to really help clients. We've seen them go and just completely change how they operate and really how they've been able to grow and focus on profitability and operations. And I know him personally as well. He's a wonderful father to 2 children. He's so genuine. I just love his energy, and I'm excited to bring him on today. So I know he also has one of his team members as well that's going to be speaking a little bit later. A couple of things I wanted to just make sure that we're clear on is our takeaways from today. You guys are on this call to get something from this. And we're going to be learning how to measure, optimize, and sustain how you and your teams are spending time, which is your most valuable resource, as we all know. We wish we had more of it. We're going to demystify key performance indicators and discuss how to use them to connect individuals to business goals. And we're going to review healthy and destructive conflict and reveal how to leverage that to build trust and drive results. So without further ado, Michael, please go ahead and share your screen. Everybody should be on speaker view, and let's dig right in.
Okay. Well, thank you, Stephanie, for the warm introduction and for allowing us to speak to the group about what we do and what we're passionate about. I am very pleased to do this. The spirit of it will be probably 30 minutes of us talking through some key concepts, but the bulk of the dialogue at the end, I hope to be interactive and really do some real-time question and answer so that we can help put some of these concepts to use and maybe bring some more clarity with regard to how they might truly impact your organization in real time. So today is about core optimization for cultural effectiveness. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about the word effective. Quick little intro on the webinar with me is John from the Equal Parts team. I'm going to let him spend a couple minutes giving you an intro to him. He's got a really unique background that he brings to the table. So John, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, everyone. My name is John Sloth. I am the core optimization advisor for Equal Parts, and Michael spoke a little bit to my background. I'll always say we're new to the San Diego area, but we moved here last spring from Seattle, where I was a licensed mental health therapist for 6 years and had my own private practice and worked in an agency. So kind of part business owner, part working in an organization with teams and departments and all the dynamics that come with that. So I'm really excited to be here and love working with Michael. bringing that behavioral health side of things into companies and cultures to help them work better together. So thank you.
Great. And you've heard enough about me. This company's been around, Equal Parts has been around about 5 years, and our core vision is to transform leaders from uncertain to empowered. And we do that through core optimization, which is time, information, and decision-making, which is what we're going to be speaking to today. To get started, I'd like to spend a couple minutes just talking about what is an effective company culture, because I think that culture has been probably an overused word in recent times. And in many ways, I think what business leaders believe culture to be is, having free beer and ping pong, right? That's not what company culture is. And my personal opinion is that those are just distractions from people hating their job. That's not what company culture is about. Creating an effective company culture is all about tying individual contributions to broader company goals so that everyone within the business understands their role, understands where their time should be allocated, understands how their decisions are driving towards a broader company vision and purpose and intention, and ultimately want to be where they are, not because they have a great environment to work in, but because their work matters. And at the end of the day, that's what creating an effective company culture is all about. John, anything here you'd like to add when we're talking about truly what effective means?
Yeah, I think this effective company culture, we hear it a lot. Effective simply means you're producing what you are wanting to produce. So an effective company culture is going to be subjective to a degree between all of your different companies based on what you want to produce. That being said, effective is always that measurement of, are we meeting our goals, whatever our goals may be? And culture, really to kind of piggyback on what Michael said, culture is a mirror that reflects back to you what your company is actively pursuing and valuing. You can say your values are A, B, and C. Your company will actually mirror back to you if those are your actual values based off of the behaviors, the patterns, the engagements within the culture. So until your culture is mirroring back to you what you want to see in your values, in your goals, until that point, we can't really call a culture effective. So it's that mirroring process, and is it mirroring back what you want to see internally and externally?
Right. So, that's in many ways probably sounds philosophical. So let's dive in and let's talk about the 3 core areas of optimization to create an effective company culture. So the first area is time. So we all know, and we've all been sort of indoctrinated throughout life that time is a fixed resource. We can't manufacture any more of it. And I think all of us as people and professionals value what we do with our time. I know I certainly do. I have 2 little kids. I have 2 businesses. I have friends. I have family, right? We all have complex lives. And so I try to be very intentional about what I do with my time. And quite honestly, if I'm just being human here, I struggle to optimize my time in its most effective way for Equal Parts. And this is what I do for a living to help other companies, and I struggle with it. So I say that in humility to put it out to everyone that it is really, really difficult to allocate time to your best and highest use in a way that actually generates the results that you need and want to achieve, especially if you're a leader within an organization. And so we organize time by function within an organization. And we've simplified this to just three categories. You're either a leader, you're either in management, or you're a contributor, you're an individual. And so at the leadership level, time should be primarily spent on growth and strategy. That means your day is consumed by activities, in the majority, that are focused on the future. You're focused on developing what could be, looking around the bend, identifying new opportunities, growing your team, developing your team, all growth-oriented activities. And the reality is many leaders within small to middle market companies are wearing a lot of hats, and that's part of the nature of being in a small to middle market company. However, I would argue that, in the hundreds of times we've done this work with clients, they are surprised by how ineffective they are with their time. And when you shine a light on it, you quickly recognize there are tasks and things that are occurring daily, weekly, monthly, semi-monthly that you just should not be doing because it's not the highest and best use of your time. So then we trickle down to management. So this time is primarily spent on efficiency, systems, and morale. So in other words, optimization of daily processes to get work done. This should be the majority of time this is where the majority of time should be spent if you are a manager within an organization. Same sort of idea. We look at managers, guess what they're doing? They're doing individual contributor level work. Hope you're able to mute everyone. Okay. Where was I? Management. Okay, so that's the sense for management. And then individuals, so those that are individual contributors, like their time should be primarily spent on tasks that are either generating revenue or saving costs, because not every role within an organization generates revenue. And so we've identified, sort of a ideal split between time that is growth oriented, optimize oriented, and contributor level oriented. And by assessing where time is being spent today, we can help create a roadmap for where time should be spent in terms of this ideal based on your category or role within an organization. And what I will say, anytime we do this for a leader and we show them the ideal, which is essentially 80% growth-oriented activities, 15% optimize, 5% contribute, they kind of all throw up their arms and say that's impossible. And I would say it's not impossible, but it is aspirational. And so it's something that you're always striving to get to. You may never actually reach 80% growth-oriented activity because the nature of your business doesn't allow for it because you're wearing a lot of hats. But I would argue in every instance that we've done this work, we have found considerable amount of time that can be shifted from one category out of optimize and contribute and into growth. And you find someone else within the organization better aligned to do those tasks. Mm-hmm. John, anything to add here?
Yeah. On that note, I would love to just encourage you all right now to ask yourself, do you feel like you have a good grip or understanding on where you're currently spending your time? When we're talking about optimizing time, we're really talking in large part about changing habits, creating discipline and boundaries around protecting your time and where it should be spent. And anytime you start to go in and tweak a habit, you need to have that awareness there first. So we'll talk about that process a little bit later, but for right now, just kind of to have percolating on the back burner there, do you feel like as leaders, as managers, as members of companies that you have a good grasp and understanding on how your time is being spent and how that time aligns with what your position actually is? So just a thing to be thinking about.
So this is the first core area to optimize to create an effective company culture. Next, we move to information. So Equal Parts it's a data-driven company. So everything we do, from measuring time to helping organizations create compelling visualizations of data, to create transparency, to how we help decisions being made, we use data to take what might otherwise be subjective and make it objective, to take something that's qualitative and make it quantitative. Because we believe that taking this approach creates a level of visibility for organizations that they've not typically had at their disposal. And so when we get to information, specifically as a second area of optimization, there are three things to keep in mind when it comes to information. First, it needs to be tracked. The right KPI, so key performance indicators, must be identified and monitored. The key word here is right. When we work with organizations and we help them understand and dissect what it is that they should be paying attention to that's going to create an effective outcome or improve a business outcome, many don't know, or they're looking at the wrong information. So it's important that you're focused on identifying the right key performance indicators for your industry, for your organization that can be tracked, monitored, and second step would be trained. That within the organization, everyone, and I really mean everyone, understands what they are, why they're important, and what their result is on the organization. Otherwise, you're just sharing information for the sake of sharing it, which doesn't create a better business outcome. That just makes you feel good about yourself because you created a scorecard and can put numbers up on the wall. What we're talking about is making sure from the CEO to the line level employee, they have and can understand the importance of why each of the indicators that are being tracked matters. And finally, make it transparent. So when it's readily available and can be consumed in an easy way, people start to change their behaviors to align with the outcome. And that's part of management's optimization strategy, is to help individuals align their behaviors with expected outcomes. Some organizations say, when I say transparent, they're saying that I'm asking them to show their net profits. That's not what I'm suggesting. You need to share what actually is going to drive behaviors. And net income for an individual contributor probably doesn't mean much. But understanding, on-time deliveries or, turnover, or whatever the KPI is that's specific to their world that they can influence, make that transparent so they understand how they're doing against some benchmark goal. And when you put this together in a compelling way to visualize the data, you've created a scorecard that's actually starting to change and incentivize individuals to move their behavior from what is today to what it needs to be to create the ideal.
And if I can piggyback off that again, this idea of transparency, trained, tracked, transparent, it creates ongoing visibility to your employees, which an area I'm incredibly passionate about is leadership development, right? You have employees who are people. They're not just task masters. And so when you have data that is driving and indicating how performance is being delivered, right? And that data, appropriate data to Michael's point, is visible to your team. One area this can be incredibly powerful is in the area of leadership development and employee performance. No surprises. You know how your team's doing. They know how they're doing. There's ongoing dialogue within the realm of performance enhancement, leadership development, and you get this trickle down effect of really something we'll talk a little bit later on, which is transformational leadership. The culture begins to turn into a culture of individuals who own and lead themselves and are accountable. But if you don't have data to base what your goals are as a leader, as an employee, you're trying to perform and just throwing a dart blinded. And so from a people perspective, visible data that's understandable that's the foundation for everything.
Great.
Michael, can I interrupt really quickly? I just have a quick question here related to data. Key performance indicators. Can you give us this is obviously very broad, but what would be some examples of things that should be tracked in really any organization, in your opinion?
Okay. So in any organization, you want to only track key performance indicators that can be influenced. So a simple key KPI for almost any organization would be gross profit. Now, it's a very simple and obvious key performance indicator, but nonetheless still important. If you've properly set up your financials to really record GP, everything in your GP can be influenced by most every employee. So by tracking it as either a percentage against a goal, or perhaps it's a dollar amount to a goal because you're only worried about achieving a particular dollar amount, not necessarily a percentage of GP, and you're tracking it month over month or an accumulated total for the year, you've just put in front of your company a key indicator that everyone can be trained on how to influence in a positive way. And it ultimately creates a better business outcome, because the better gross profit you have, in theory, the better net income, and the more money there is to reinvest back into the business for raises and incentives and growing the company and all the other avenues in which a company would reinvest its profits back into. And that's a very simple KPI that can also be very powerful if presented the right way. And again, it's trained. In other words, everyone understands what it means, that it doesn't mean the money that goes in the owner's pocket at the end of the day,
Mhm.
that they understand how their contributions can drive that in a positive way.
Got it. Thank you.
The third core area for optimization is decision making. So decisions are only effective when, again, three things happen. They're responsive, so they're in response to and reacting to accurate data and trends. They're decisive, so they're made once, and they're only changed if information changes. So just focusing in on decisive, I'm sure we've all been in meetings where a key decision has been needs to be made about a future outcome of the business, and there's a lot of head nodding and I don't know, what do you think? I don't know, what do you think? And 45 minutes go by and no decision's been made, right? And then everyone throws up their arms and they're frustrated and they feel like it's been a waste of time because it has been. So this is why we focus on using information to help drive decisions. And you make them, you make the decisions, and you change the decision only if the input values change. Otherwise, you have to believe you've made the right decision based on the information known, which means the information needs to be correct and accurate. And finally, they're impactful. So using awareness and insight to achieve a positive outcome. So a decision is only effective when it's actually moved the situation into a better place than it was previously. Now, the beautiful thing about decisions is that you can always make another one. So a key here is to remember to make the decision based on data and trends, provided they're accurate, put it in the feedback loop, assess, analyze, make a new decision if the decision you originally made now is being impacted by new data or trends.
And one of the things we do with clients that we work with right from the get-go is we look at the emotional intelligence of the team, the individuals we're working with. That last point, impactful, using awareness and insight. Emotional intelligence is such a vital tool for decision making and decision makers because it gives you an internal glance at how you process data. It looks at your ability to look at fact, what it means to trust your gut. It looks at how resilient you are in stressful situations. All of these factors impact your ability to actually process data in real time. And so there is the data piece of decision making that we've talked about, having increased awareness and insight. There's also the human side of decision making. And that's where we use emotional intelligence to increase awareness and insight to help leaders, to help managers, to help direct contributors have fewer blind spots into how they're engaging their work every single day to make sure they're actually making the decisions they want to make based off of the data they're presented with.
Great. So let's talk about 3 results from creating an effective company culture. The first is better responsiveness. So when leaders work together with the information they need on a regular basis, this enables fast, decisive action that positively impacts the entire organization, which frees resources for future growth planning. So this connects back to information, and it also connects back to time, right? So let me focus on the endpoint there, frees resources for future growth planning. If you're responsive within your organization, you're making decisions in real time, you're using information to make decisions based on what you know and what you're tracking and training, you have freed yourself up to focus your energy, time, and resources on what's next. You're not stuck in a feedback loop or a hamster wheel where you're constantly reevaluating what has already been known, but yet not acted upon. And so I've seen this time and time again, where when we work with companies and we help them better understand what's happening within the business, the leadership team, through better awareness, utilizing an EQI tool, understands how to make more relevant decisions, which then frees up their time. Going back to the first area of optimization, it already helps to change their ratio of time. It starts to push more time back into growth-oriented activities, which is where we want them to be and where they want to be, quite honestly. So this is the key result, number one.
Yep. And that leadership working together, that is the key phrase that sets up the rest of that paragraph there. If you're not working together, you can have the best data in the world and the team itself will be the roadblock. So leadership working together, you have that opens you up for increased responsiveness.
Second key result, increased visibility. So right information, right? We've talked about that at the right time in the right hands doesn't happen by itself. So you can gain efficiency within an organization when trackable data is made available to make decisions. Again, hopefully you're starting to see the connection here. You create visibility, you track the right key performance indicators, everyone within the organization is trained, they understand them. It creates broader visibility, which then helps you to make better and more effective decisions, which again frees up your time to focus on growth-oriented activities.
Yep. Just emphasizing again, the transparency of this process from a team perspective is incredibly valuable.
And finally, the third key result, improved cooperation. I love looking at organizations like micro societies, right? It's true. They have their own values, skills, and history, and that cannot go without consideration as you work towards creating an effective company culture. And so when organizations, when they're high trust and they're effective, they're built on the strengths and values of cooperative employees working towards a shared purpose. Now, today we didn't spend much time at all talking about mission, vision, values. And we probably should have, but for this particular discussion, I wanted to focus on optimization of time, information, and decision making. But hopefully everyone is aware of, and it goes without saying, that without clearly defined vision, mission, and values, none of this can happen. And that's because all business decisions need to be in support of your company's vision, mission, and values. And that becomes a key component of growing your team, is helping them understand how to connect their individual decisions and their contributions to a broader purpose, which goes back to where we started this dialogue. Effective cultures are those where everyone within the organization clearly understands how their contributions impact and support broader company goals.
Yeah, it's your North Star. How can you lead a team where every individual has their own North Star, their own purpose for being there? Of course, there will be individual purposes, but collectively, everyone is essentially doing what's right in their own mind. You can't lead that way. You can't be trained that way. You can't be a part of an effective team that way if everybody's going in a different direction. And so a lot of times we'll start to work with companies and understandably, they want, what's the next step? What's the next step? How do we optimize this? And the question always starts with, what's driving your team? And if there's not an identified North Star, core values, vision, mission, you have to start there. And it's not always pretty. It is a hard process to get a team together to identify, this is what we're about, this is where we want to head, and this is who we are. You need that to have a company moving together. And so that's my thought on that one.
So those are three key results. Again, better responsiveness, increased visibility, and improved cooperation. So top three considerations or takeaways. So we tried to organize these like real simple formulas because I love math. So number one, related to time. So the right work using the right time equals effective organizational contributions. So essentially, are your people focused on doing the right work? That's a question I would have everyone ask of themselves, right, as individuals and of their teams. And when you start to really understand where time is being spent and what it's being spent doing, it can be shifted and morphed in positive ways that do two things. Number one, better allocates your time to the right ratio based on your category role. And two, it typically makes people happier because people want to do work that is aligned with the job for which they were hired. And in many instances, that's not what's happening. Second, the right data in the right context equals improved outcomes. So as the saying goes, what gets measured gets managed. Again, it's not about tracking every possible thing that's trackable within an organization. I mean, we live in a data-rich society right now. It's about tracking the right data in the right context. That's how you achieve improved outcomes. And then finally, with regard to decision-making, awareness plus insight equals intentional decision-making. Specifically, what does that mean? What's going on plus why is it going on equals what are we going to do about it? And this is key. This is key to how to improve business outcomes. It's all about making the right decisions at the right time, using the right information so that resources can be allocated in better and more helpful ways to broaden and support company goals.
And I'm a huge stickler on awareness and insight. Michael knows this. And awareness and insight, that transcends just data, that transcends time. That is awareness and insight into all things data, insight, decision-making, your values, all of that. If you don't have awareness and insight, how can you be intentional about what you're doing in any aspect of your company? So that's my soapbox, awareness and insight.
I have a question real quick, Michael.
Yeah.
Related, if we can go back to the last slide. Yes, perfect. So I find myself, and like many of you on the call, perhaps, getting stuck in this like over analyzing any decision, which ultimately takes time and energy away from obviously growth producing tasks that I have and focusing on growth. So what would be some, like any insight for us or those on the call that might find themselves in this situation on how we can reduce that time spent on decision making?
Yeah. So I think it's maybe it's a number of things. Let's maybe talk about two. So one would be pretty common, right? Where especially if you're leading an organization, you're making high stakes decisions. In other words, decisions that you're making don't just impact you, they impact a lot of parts, if not every part of your business, your team, your clients. Can you hire somebody else? Should you hire somebody else? They're high stakes. And so when I see people get stuck, I know I sound like a broken record, it's because they're not paying attention to the right inputs to help them make the decision. They're relying too heavily on subjective analysis of what could be. And when you get in that cycle, it's really hard to get out of because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's right. This is what I think is going to happen, but I don't really know what's going to happen. But if it happens, what am I going to do? Oh, but this is what I think is going to happen, but I don't know what's going to happen. So you get stuck. So how do you unstick yourself? Well, if we're following, kind of the messaging for today, it would be getting in touch with awareness and insight. In other words, what are your strengths when it comes to understanding how you handle decisions? And number two, it would be using key information that you have access to within your organization to help drive and guide your decision so that it is not a subjective decision. It is not purely a gut instinct response. It has some input that, unless you're tracking garbage, you can't argue with it, right? So that would be my thought around that.
Got it. I think it just having, a scorecard or things that can be measurable that can help make the decision so it's not so subjective, and making sure what you're tracking is right.
Yep, that's one key part of it.
And then probably getting clear on your values, right? Everything goes back to your values and your mission and making sure that.
So any decision, again, should be hedged up against that, right? So, our vision at Equal Parts is transforming leaders from uncertain to uncertain to empowered. So when I'm thinking about decisions I'm making for the business, I'm hedging that against that statement. is what we're going to do be in support of that vision? Or is it in contrast to it? Well, then I need to really ask myself, am I making the right decision? Otherwise, I don't believe in my vision. I don't believe in it. Our values: be human, be fair, be driven, right? I even used be human today. I didn't mean to when we started the conversation about sometimes I fail with where I allocate my own time, right? Being fair. When I'm going to engage with a new client or a client, am I being fair, right? Am I being driven? Am I working towards pushing something and the team towards a collective goal that's in support of the vision? I do go back to my values, to our values, excuse me, as an organization to help understand, am I making the right decision? And that combined with a scorecard or data really helps me understand whether I'm making the right decision.
Thank you.
So I think we're right in at 35 minutes. So I would love to field some questions if there are any from the group, and we'll do our best to answer on our toes.
Yeah, so we're just going to go off the screen share now and would love any of your input or questions, concerns, anything that came up. I know I got a couple of emails prior to this meeting. In your confirmation of this meeting, we asked if you had specific questions, just email us. And so we did get a couple of those that we'd love to address, or if any of you have any, please feel free to ask. Use this time. I'm sure somebody else has the same question. Don't be shy. Joanne. There you are.
All right. So, Michael, what happens when you have a clear vision and you have, all of your core values together, and then something like a pandemic hits and you're shattered and you don't know what else to do? What do you find would be the best way to get yourself back on track?
Man.
When all around you is chaos and different?
Yeah. Well, man, that is a deep question. The first thing that comes to mind is, how can you leverage your values to re-inspire your team to recognize how, by holding true to them, they did show some resilience and come out on the other end of this, whether you are really deeply impacted by the pandemic or just created chaos. Can you, in a way, shift the values of the business and reconnect them to the individuals so they understand how decisions that were made along the way were still aligned with your values, even if the end result was you're not where you wanted to have been because of the pandemic? I still think they're foundational, right? They haven't changed, right? The world around your values changed. So if they're an anchor and they're a centerpiece, how can you connect everyone back to them to kind of use as a revitalization to re-inspire the workforce?
On that note too, we're in a global pandemic that our ability to control is very, very tiny. You can control how you respond to it. You can control the actions you choose to have into it. But we as an entire planet have been living for over a year with this huge thing over our heads that we can't control. And a huge dose of empathy is needed for leaders right now with the teams they're leading. And how you can bring values into that is you can actually start to use empathy as a lens through which you use your values. So when we have team meetings with clients, we ask, how did your values show up this week? It's not limited to the workplace. And in fact, the shares I love hearing the most are, how did your values show up in your individual life? So, like Michael said, be human is one of equal parts values. There are days where I just feel beat down, like full transparency. I'm exhausted of wearing a mask everywhere. I'm exhausted of the news being dominated by this thing. And that impacts how I show up to my team. And so just being able to say, okay, let's talk about being human. It's a bad day for me. It's rough. Thank you for giving me the environment as a coworker to get that off my chest. Again, you don't just have people performing a job, you have people. And people in times like this need a lot of empathy and a lot of that personal connection. If we just keep it at a high level, here's our company goals. Great, we're in a pandemic. I'm struggling. Is there any room to bring that human part of me into the job? So that's how I think values can show up too.
Thank you.
I think you're muted, Stephanie.
Gabby, are you still online? Do you have any questions? I know you emailed me ahead of time.
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback on what Joanne's question, because I love the fact that you know, having this mindset that we need to recognize that this is a highly stressful time for all our companies. And I was just gonna ask if there's a kind of like a quick tip of how to allow people to share their frustration and whatever, but not go into this rabbit hole where, you know, it's all doom and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
How do we, okay, we said that, now, you know what?
I think the best way to do that, and something we advise for clients in terms of performance management, is to use a check-in process that is at a cadence that feels comfortable for the organization, whether that might be a quick 5-minute once a week, maybe it's every other week, maybe it's even once a month, maybe that's an appropriate cadence. But by doing so, it's allowing, excuse me, a manager to check in with their team members on a one-to-one basis quickly, 5 to 7 minutes. And through that, trust is built, transparency is encouraged. And that might be the appropriate opportunity for someone to talk about, you know, this is crap right now, right? This is what I'm struggling with. This is what I'm facing. My caution with that strategy is to make sure it doesn't become a mini therapy session, which is not intended to do. It's intended to help an individual overcome an obstacle, even if the source of that obstacle isn't necessarily work related. But, you know, a quick one-to-one check-in, 5 to 7 minutes with a brief agenda of the 3 questions you're going to kind of review, like what's going on, what do you need, what can I do for you, can allow for those conversations to happen naturally without burdening the group and creating an environment that's, yeah, maybe doom and gloom and, you know, going down the rabbit hole.
Can you repeat the 3 questions? What's going on?
Yeah, like what's going on, what can I do for you, and like an obstacle that needs removing.
Okay, thank you.
So Michael, we had another question come in before the meeting, and that question had to do with just kind of a communication issue at the management level. I think some strategies on, you know, not wanting to look bad to non-managers, right? How do we, you know, what would be some strategies around, like, again, increasing communication within the managers, not necessarily managers and who they're managing, but within the management team?
Okay. John, got any ideas here?
Yeah. What is, I don't mean to be philosophical here, but first starting off with a question of what is communication and what makes it bad, right? Communication is not just delivering information. It is actually having that information received and understood, and then validated that it was received and understood. That's the communication process. And where there's oftentimes a breakdown in communication is individual A thinks they're delivering it, and they've delivered it in a way that's right in their mind. Individual B is not receiving it for whatever reason. It really could be a system where they didn't get the email, or it could be that how it was communicated, the words that were used just was not connecting with person B. If that's not addressed, you have a breakdown in communication. So it really is, it's like playing ping pong. You deliver the information, And then it's the responsibility of the other individual to say, I get it, understood, we're good to go, or I'm not understanding it. And you revise back and forth until you reach a place of the message has been delivered and it's been understood. Now that's the process of communication. There is so much waste within so many companies with everything from communication it's too lengthy, get to the point, or it's too much to the point, you hurt my feelings. There are all these different dynamics at play that to just say, here's how you avoid bad communication, I won't say it's impossible, but we can give you some steps to here, make sure your message is clear, make sure it was received, have that checks and balances. But there's also, again, the people aspect of it. Is there trust on your team? If there's no trust on your team and you have to communicate a difficult message, there's a high likelihood that what you say is going to be interpreted as a personal, not necessarily a personal attack, but maybe, or it's about the person, not the issue. So this idea of bad communication, is it literally the process of communication, or is it a team dynamic issue? The process is relatively easy to create an SOP around. The team dynamic issue it would be irresponsible of myself or Michael to assume we know what the dynamic is that's causing that bad communication.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I wanted to make a comment, if I could. And just obviously, we're all dealing with this in our companies about this past year and what it's done to ourselves and to everyone else. And one thing that we've done in my company is we created, it's called a Reconnecting in 2021 campaign. And with everyone having a mask on, one of the things we did is we have a wall of smiles. So we got a picture, a beautiful 8x10 of everyone, and it's all hanging up both at my warehouse and at my main location. And then every Monday we have a thought-provoking question, or who are all the members in your household? So then people are sending pictures of their dogs or pets or whatever. But it's just different things that has brought us together, like, oh, I didn't know that guy was a mountain bike person, because you can't have, all these one-on-one meetings. And it's actually done a lot of bringing us back together this year. So I'm kind of giving you the Reader's Digest version, but it's worked very well for us in bringing our team back together with this crazy COVID year.
That's
love
awesome.
that.
Thank you
Yeah.
so
That
much
is
for
brilliant.
sharing.
That is brilliant.
And does anybody else have anything to share of what they've done that they've seen great results? Obviously, it definitely has been or is a year, hopefully, to reconnect and move past 2020. Anybody? John, Michael, have you guys seen any of your companies that you guys work with do anything creative or different to kind of help foster connection?
A lot of remote happy hours for sure. A lot of Zoom happy hours. However you can get your team together to play, not necessarily on work hours, but again, to connect that human element is so helpful. I just want to applaud Kelly. Like, that is a brilliant way of connecting people as people. So yeah, a lot of happy hours. And that's been the big one that I've seen.
Michael, I have a question for you. In the beginning, you mentioned that you weren't so fond of going out and playing ping pong or beer pong, with the team, and you didn't feel like that was effective, and it kind of just masks people hating their job. Can you touch on that? Because I think that's super important.
Yeah, I'm saying that's not what creates an effective company culture. I'm not saying it's not important to have time for socialization, but that's not what creates an effective company culture. That's a byproduct or a nice to have that people will actually use for the right reasons when they want to be at work. So I'm not suggesting you don't do that, or you don't have those perks and benefits and create a fun environment for your team. Not at all. my point is that some organizations believe by doing so, they've created an engaging, effective workplace and culture, which is not the case.
To emphasize that as business leaders, let's say you did 10 employee, annual reviews, and you said, why are you working here? And they said, well, the beer pong's incredibly competitive. I love it. This is a really fun place. Great, but I would rather, as a leader here, the values speak to me. Engaging clients and producing this result is what helps me have a smile on my face in the middle of a pandemic as I get to work. So, like Michael was saying, beer pong's great. If that's the only or the primary reason people are at your company, then that's a really interesting culture that you've created. And that I think can mirror back a lot of what your practiced values are.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just share too. Last year we were able to stay open and did not go remote from March to December. And so we enjoyed each other's company in an office cooperatively and obviously following all the health guidelines. And then December, we chose to go remote, and we have since been remote. And I'm in the office today. I get to have my door shut, but everybody else is at home. And that's been a transition for us. And so we've really used Slack channels and kind of just a way to kind of keep connection and communication with each other, and trying to recreate, wellness. And we have a wellness channel where we can all contribute to. It's like instant messaging. And one of the exercises we do each week is we do go over kind of our 10 agreements as an organization. I imagine it would be like values. We have agreements that we've made to each other as a team. And we pick one of those agreements each week that we all are in agreement that we want to really focus on and be aware of. And it could be like, practice open and honest communication is one of them. It could be support and check in with each other. And we'll pick one and we focus on it. And we have a Slack channel specifically for that. So when we see somebody else exercising or really owning in on that particular agreement, we do a shout out in that channel. So that's a way to kind of, again, keep in mind and keep our focus on what our agreements are and what we're holding each other to, and how people practice it within the organization and really give shout outs. So that's been helpful.
Nice.
Excellent.
Well, I think it's 10:57. We have a couple more minutes. I just wanted to thank you so much, Michael and John, for sharing your insight. This was so valuable, and thank you all for attending. I do want you all to save the date. May 11th is going to be our next webinar. We have Tom Burns, president of Premier Plan Consultants. They are a third-party administrator in retirement plans. And so you may have heard of him. If you do have a retirement plan, you may be using their organization to do your third-party administration. He is going to be sharing some insight on trends for 2021 on retirement plans. How people are designing their plans. A lot of companies right now that are growing and kind of seeing an upward growth going into 2021 are having a really hard time attracting talent. And so this could be a way to kind of, what more can we do for employees to kind of attract and retain the proper talent and reward them through retirement plan trends, solutions, options. So Tom will be on as our speaker May 11th from 10 to 11.